Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Dr. Rose Hayden Smith is an author, historian, and food systems expert. She has a passion for the American gardening programs of World War I, and she is often called the Victory Grower. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to chat with you both.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your day, not only to help educate Holly and myself and talk with us, but all of our listeners from across the country and all of our stations.
So, not many people, I'm not sure how many people are familiar, but what is a Victory Garden?
Okay, so Victory Gardens originated in the United States during World War I as part of Homefront mobilization. They were initially called Liberty Gardens and then quickly were renamed Victory Gardens. And they were modeled on successful programs in the United Kingdom and Canada. And they also built on previous United States experiences in gardening, including the popularity of school garden programs, relief gardening efforts. And they reemerged in World War II. And it was in World War II, Victory Gardens were absolutely the iconic home front mobilization. In World War I, the programs there were several different kinds of programs that were organized by different groups that were public and private, sort of collaboration. And they encouraged school, home, community, and workplace gardens, and they also focused on food conservation and food preservation.
Well, there can be a lot of parallels drawn from the World War I time era and today. There was a pandemic back then. What are some of the other parallels that you see people showing interest in growing their own food today as they did back then?
Well, I have to tell you that the parallels to me between World War I and today are there are lots of them. Not only was there a pandemic, also with not effective medical treatments, no antivirals or antibiotics to treat secondary infections in World War I. But there were also a lot of issues with civil unrest on the American home front. During World War I, there were concerns about food security. There were concerns about disruptions in the food supply, and there were also big divisions between urban and rural in that period in American life. One of the things that was really surprising to me when I first started studying this topic was the fact that there was also, more than 100 years ago, concern about kids not knowing where their food came from and where the next generation of farmers might come from. So lots and lots of similarities. And I also think, too, just the overwhelming interest in gardening right now. I mean, you two have been in this for a long time, and I don't know what you're seeing, but it's the interest is absolutely overwhelming.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Now,
we see the interest more this year than we've ever seen, and I'm just looking at statistics of what's coming in on our end. New gardeners, a lot of questions of people whom we didn't even know had a garden or was interested in growing a garden. They're asking us questions that a new gardener would and should ask because of the situation that we're all in.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. So you are a food systems expert. So what is that, and how does that apply to even just someone growing some tomatoes on their apartment patio?
Okay, that is such a great question. So, the food system is a term that a lot of us throw around, but what does it really mean, right? So, food system encompasses all kinds of activities that are involved in bringing food to our tables. I mean, there's the laboratory science, research around seeds and all sorts of things. There's the production and the harvesting of food, the processing, distribution, and then, our consumption of it. And what I like to tell people is that everyone eats and everyone has a stake in the food system. And I actually became interested in the larger food system after I became a gardener because, gardening was such an important activity to me. And then you look at it within the context of, yes, it's home food production for most of us and on a pretty modest scale. And certainly what I produce in my home garden it doesn't take away my need to actually, buy food from farmers, right?
Right.
They can grow a lot of things I can't grow. And I have found that it's just gardening is a great activity to get people to start thinking about the larger context of food in America, food and agriculture.
Well, that's the thing. Back in, the World War I, everybody probably knew somebody who was a farmer if they didn't live on a farm. Nowadays, there's a lot of disconnect that you've got to go through. Oh, well, no, let me check. A lot of people, there's not that connection of, hey, I know a farmer. Well, I think I know somebody who might know, who kind of knows. They think they might know a farmer. It's very, very distant now compared to 100 years ago.
Yeah, and actually, there's if you look at it, there's been a real decline in the percentage of people in our population that are working directly with agriculture, right? It's just a very small percentage now of people in this country, although the impacts of it are really outsized. And I'm really fortunate because I live in a county that is a major agricultural producer of fruits and vegetables, a leading strawberry producer, lemons, avocados, probably the number one celery producer in the United States. So I'm lucky because I know a lot of farmers, but I agree with you. But I do want to, let people know, because a lot of people may not be aware of this, is the 1920 census, right at the sort of end of World War I, was the first census that revealed that, we were really becoming a more sort of urbanized and suburbanized country. And so I would say that the movement off the land, is a larger trajectory that, every year, since, probably the Civil War, you saw declines, smaller numbers, and obviously too, our population is larger.
Definitely. Now, your book, Sowing the Seeds of Victory, American Gardening Programs of World War I. What inspired you to write this book? Now, I know you kind of talked about the food systems expert part, but what inspired you to write this book specifically?
Okay, so this is a really interesting story. I was a garden educator for decades. And I was, just sort of noodling around on the internet one day because I was kind of interested in Victory Gardens. And I found this obscure article that was about something called the United States School Garden Army in World War I. I had never heard of this. And it was sort of fell under the umbrella of the Victory Garden program in World War I. But basically it was this program that was run through the Bureau of Education, was sort of spearheaded it nationally, and it was one of the first sort of national curricular things, and it targeted urban and suburban kids to teach them how to garden and how to raise food, how to produce food. And what was really interesting about it is that it was funded by Woodrow Wilson with money from the War Department. And it was positioned as the work that these kids would do in their gardens was essential to national security. And so I was so intrigued. I started doing research about the World War I programs, and I actually drove up to UC, made an appointment, drove up to UC Santa Barbara at the age of, like not young, right? And said, could I come get a doctorate in history here and have my dissertation be on these programs? And I was accepted to the program, and basically the book was adapted from my dissertation.
Wow, that's really neat.
So I started graduate school. I started a doctoral program at age 42.
Fantastic. That's awesome. So why should we look at history when it comes to things like growing food, changing food systems, even pandemics?
Well, I'm fascinated by history, always have been. But what I see when I look at history is that people have dealt with these challenges before, right? And maybe the larger context is different, but, people have dealt with these challenges before. And I think particularly in what I've learned about these gardening models is that there are models and there are public policies and there are examples that we could learn from. This idea of framing food and what you produce in your community as being really important to national security. And then in World War II, when actual food security is pretty good in this country, the Victory Garden program pivots to this new message around nutritional defense, and that one of the best things that you can do as a citizen of the country is to grow food in school, home, community, or workplace gardens and use that food to eat well and improve your health. So that you can, be contributing a really positive contributions to your society. And so I just think that there's an awful lot of good stuff that we forget about or that gets dropped and goes by the wayside.
Well, and with the
look at now in this pandemic, everyone's baking bread and sort of rediscovering all these wonderful things that our grandparents and great-grandparents knew how to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the Victory Gardens, World War I, World War II, even today, there's COVID Victory Gardens that are popping up, and people are, even if they grow a lettuce on their patio porch deck, a tomato, that's one less item that they are purchasing that we know that not everybody in the world can grow based on where they're at. So if we can grow a little bit in our little patio porch deck garden, it gives everybody else the access to that pear or that tomato or that whatever it is that we would have taken from them. So it helps everything out, even your little, few things that you grow wherever you're at.
Well, and if you have children, it's a wonderful, science-based activity. It's great. It's great physical exercise. Too, it's emotionally satisfying. It's relaxing. We can beautify spaces with gardens. I think that they're so important. One of the things that I always want to acknowledge is that, gardening is a privilege and not everyone has access to land. And that one of the things that the historical models can also, tell us is the importance of creating spaces in communities and providing technical assistance and, if possible, supplies so that people can access this wonderful activity.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Rose, we greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day to educate all of us on this. How can we find out more about you, and how can we get the book?
Okay, so you can find out more about me on my website, which is rosehaydensmith.com. And I've got a link. I write a blog weekly, and I've got links to articles. I've got images on the website with historical information, all those beautiful posters, and I've got a link to my book. So the publisher and Amazon.
Well, Dr. Rose, we greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day and the information you've shared with all of us.
And thank you for having me. Talk to you soon.
Will do.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.